So, Jason, there's a new phrase that I encountered recently that I wasn't really thinking of, but I think you and I both think it's interesting. We should discuss. It is digital parasite.
It's a term that I hadn't thought of till just recently, but it has come up, and it has come up in some reading, some journalism that's out there. But yeah, digital parasite.
So the idea is that we're used to attacks being massive and disruptive. And if we want to take that biology example, kill the host level attacks, like a ransomware that completely shuts your organization down. And the trouble with that is it kills the host.
Tim, you and I often talk about that form of problem for the attacker with OT and critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why our lights don't go off, because it's not because the hackers don't have ways to turn off our lights, or adversaries, nation state or otherwise.
Right.
It's simply because if that started to happen often enough, there would be consequences to the bad guys.
And there are lots of consequences, right? You can think about when an attack is bad enough, think about the Keystone Pipeline, then tremendous resources are put into getting the bad guys, and sometimes it works. Or tremendous resources are putting into retrieving the ransom money, and sometimes that works. There also is the idea that if these things are bad enough and deadly enough, that societally measures will occur to prevent them from happening. You know, certainly you see much more emphasis on protections because these attacks have gone up. You see supply chain regulations and enforcement because these things have gone up. Certainly there are ideas floating around of things like make it illegal to pay ransomware, which would, go a long way in shutting that market down. Now, some people might choose to pay it illegally, but at that point you'd see that would really dry up as a financial opportunity. And all of these things are negative consequences for the business of being a cyber attacker, right?
Very negative.
It's a lot like a virus, right? The kind of virus that sweeps through a populace and just kills them in mass doesn't tend to last because it runs out of hosts.
We see
and
that.
The kind of virus that persists year in, year out is the common cold. It's a virus that the hosts survive. And so we're seeing that adaptation occurring in the world of cybercrime, where criminals are moving away from these massive kill the host ransomware style attacks, and they're preferring, or they're trying to become long-term, persistent, living inside the environment of the attacked, the host, and just profiting a little bit over a long period of time. Just enough, right?
Just enough to not affect the host. Tim, I tell you, I think the general society, and I hate to say it, but this includes cybersecurity defenders, architects of cybersecurity defense systems.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been informed by Hollywood about how attacks happen. Big smash, grab, exciting on the screen attacks.
Sure.
And also by journalists who want clicks.
Yeah. And that's a story, right? If an airline goes down and nobody can fly anywhere, that's a story. If suddenly nobody in the UK can get medical attention for several days, that's a story. You understand why that stuff's in the news, right? That is news.
However, what's the true news is what you're saying, Tim. The digital parasites that are smart with their hosts are the ones who are slight lateral movement and persistence.
Yeah, right.
Does that get headlines?
No.
No, but it's...
Well, because ideally, if it's implemented the way it's intended, nobody knows. That's the intent, is for nobody to know. Right?
Tim, maybe the best analogy, I'm trying to think about how to make people understand what we're trying to say, because the idea of a smart host, a smart parasite who's invaded a host,
right,
is understandable, but I think people need something more concrete. And I think what it comes down to is something a little more exciting, something a little more clickbaitable. Sleeper cells. And I would say that this is the analogy. The bad guy, the less they move, the less they make noise, the less they create a paper trail within the host system,
right,
the less that they're being sought after, the
less chance of being discovered and rooted out. Yeah.
And even if their goal is slow exfiltration of your data,
sure,
or slow, low amounts of fraud,
yep,
they will probably
right,
go unnoticed.
Sure. Or in the case of an APT, the goal might be set a trap that I can trigger whenever I want.
And sometimes, though, what you're calling a trap can be a logic bomb,
right,
which doesn't even require command and control communication.
Yeah.
I happen to know a lot about those kinds of things, and I don't even like talking about that because I don't want to give bad guys ideas. But my God, folks, this is where the real problem is. And I'm glad that there's a little bit more talk about it these days.
Yeah. And I like this analogy a lot. When I read that article, I said, yeah, that's the perfect analogy.
It is.
And what's nice about that is we all understand the concept of a parasite. And so if you apply that to this kind of attacker digital environment model, it works almost perfectly. Right?
And the bad guys have been doing this forever. It's just, I think now, because of the economy of the bad guys, Tim,
yeah,
there is a portion of bad guys that actually do the exfiltration, actually do the targeting, actually do I have a mission goal with my target. And there's also another class of attacker which benefits from the buyer class of attacker.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're just popping the shell, lateral movement, and they are true experts in persistence.
Right.
Because that persistence of a whole beachhead on a host is exactly what allows the other smart attacker to then do their goals. And I think that people don't realize that in terms of the weaponization pipeline of the bad guy, persistence smarts might be one of the things that the bad guys have gotten better and better at over time.
Yeah, I think so. And again, if you go to this analogy, you would say that is a product of evolution, right? In the biological world, you'd say that's a product of evolution because these parasites survive better than those parasites. I think you see a similar thing here. It's just a product of economic advantage. It's economically advantageous to pursue that second course.
It's the one edge the bad guy has in asymmetric adversarial environment. They have the ability to be quiet when they're quiet. Right? So, Tim, before we end the podcast on this, I want to add one thought to this.
Please.
The shortening of certificate lifespans
Yeah.
has a major role in what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because one of the major persistent technologies the bad guy has is if they steal a credential,
Heck yeah.
that is their persistence mechanism.
Right. Yep.
If the way to take away that persistence from the bad guy is to shorten your credential lifespan.
And one of the things, of course, that you and I probably don't talk about enough is there is still a very real, very common use of non-certificate based keys. And the trouble with non-certificate based keys is the expiration is never.
SSH key pairs that have no certificate wrapping with a lifespan,
Right.
it's very difficult to
no expiration, no revocation. And so if you're thinking about a world where the digital parasite is a worrisome attack vector, this persistent practice we have of using non-certificate based SSH keys is very enabling for that kind of attacker.
I'm going to say something that nobody's going to like. I've heard a lot of people say, Jay, in my private certificate authority, should I follow what CabForum is saying, or the browser ecosystem is saying, 90-day, 47-day certificates for private certificate authority use? And I always say, well, what's your use case? And they say, well, it's authentication. And I say to them, you shouldn't think about, hallelujah, I'm running a private CA. I can have 5-year certs.
Right.
What you should be saying isn't even, hey, CabForum says 47-day for public. What you really should be saying is, how long is the operation of your typical person who's logging in to do a job? Well, people typically go home at night.
Yeah.
So 1-day certs make an awful lot of sense. Maybe make it a 2-day cert, but make it on a per job basis. In other words, shorten that certificate lifespan as much as possible is the best answer. If you're running private CAs and you're thinking that public terms make sense for you arbitrarily, they don't. You probably don't want to. And the typical urge is to make longer lifespans with private, even though you probably should be going even shorter than public lifespans. Just wanted to throw that in because, Tim, this is a very major part of the answer for how to deal with these parasites.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, exactly. And that's why we wanted to introduce this. I think it's a really useful model for thinking about the problems we face. And yes, it has direct applicability to how we think about our digital identity and our certificates and our PKI.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Jay.